but his sentence would be significantly lighter than Emily's. Emily's trial began on September 30th, 2023, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. The prosecution presented a clear and convincing case, and the jury returned a guilty verdict. Emily was sentenced to death for the murder of Sarah Hawkins. Hawk was devastated by the revelation of his wife's secret life. He struggled to accept the fact that he never knew his wife's true nature. He felt betrayed and deceived, and his world was broken by the truth. The community was shocked and saddened. By the events that had unfolded, Sarah's murder had sent shockwaves through the small town, and the revelation of Emily's involvement had left everyone in shock. The town would never be the same again, and the memory of Sarah's tragic death would linger for years in local media. Covered the story extensively, and the community was placed in the national spotlight. The case has raised questions about the secrets that can be hidden behind closed doors and the devastating consequences of uncontrolled emotions. In the end, the community was left to pick up the pieces and try to heal. They came together to support each other and find a way forward. Though Sarah's tragic death will always be remembered, do you think Emily deserved a lighter sentence considering she was being blackmailed and had a chance to escape? We hope you found this true crime story as compelling as we did while creating it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more crime stories and click here to watch another gripping story. On March 6, 2024, in a small rural town in Indiana, the body of a young housewife was discovered in a secluded field. As the investigation progressed, the police uncovered a shocking scandal involving a Christian priest, an affair, an abortion, and ultimately murder. In the quiet town of St. Mary's Parish, where everyone seemed to know each other's business, Emma Richardson appeared to have an ideal life. She had a beautiful home, 2 lovely children, and a hard-working husband, John. However, John's commitment to providing for his family meant long hours at the office and late nights buried in paperwork. While Emma was proud of her husband's success, she often felt isolated, with her days filled with household chores and her nights void of meaningful conversation. It was during one of these lonely days, after a Sunday service, that Emma first spoke to Father Michael Donovan. The priest had a calm, understanding demeanor and showed genuine interest in the lives of his parishioners. Emma admired how he always seemed to have the perfect words for those in need. Their conversations began with small talk, discussing the sermon or the latest community event. But as the weeks went by, their conversations became deeper. Father Michael was asking about Emma's well-being, and she found herself opening up in a way she never had with anyone else. She told him about her loneliness, how John was never there, and how she just felt. Another piece of furniture in his own home. Father Michael listened attentively, offering comfort where he could, and soon their meetings became a regular occurrence. They sat in his office at church, where the walls seemed to close them off from the rest of the world. Began as innocent discussions about faith and family, slowly turned into something neither of them expected. Father Michael, despite his wishes, could not deny the growing attraction he felt for Emma. She, in turn, found in him the attention and hair care that she had so desperately missed when they first kissed. It happened on a cold December evening. Emma had come to the church after another argument with John. Tears filled her eyes as she spoke of her frustration and loneliness. Father Michael reached out to comfort her, and before either of them could think their lips met, the guilt was immediate. But so was the passion from that moment on. Bonded in a secret that would ultimately destroy them both in January, just a month after their first kiss, Emma began to experience the signs that she was often tired. She felt nauseous in the mornings, and her emotions were all over the place. Where she suspected what it could be, but didn't want to face it, the idea that she might carry Father Michael's child filled her with both excitement and dread. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, she took a pregnancy test, her hands shaking as she waited for the result when the 2 lines appeared, confirming her fears. She was sitting on the bathroom floor. Tears were streaming down his face. What was she going to do? How could she explain this to John? She hadn't been with him in weeks, and there was no way. The baby could be her. John, who noticed Emma's mood swings and changes in her behavior, began to suspect something was wrong. He asked her if she was feeling okay, if something was bothering her. but she pushed him away every time. She couldn't tell him the truth. Not now. Not ever. When Emma told Father Michael about the pregnancy, she expected him to be shocked, but she didn't expect the coldness of his response. He wasn't horrified. The life they had created, but by what it meant to him, he knew that if the affair came to light, he would lose his entire position in the church, the respect of the community and his very soul. He must get rid of them, he said bluntly, voice devoid of the warmth that had once attracted her. Emma was stunned. Perhaps she had foolishly thought they could find a way to make it work. Maybe this baby was a sign that they were meant to be together, but Father Michael saw the baby as nothing more than a threat to his carefully constructed life. Father Michael was relentless day after day. He pressured Emma to have an abortion. He reminded her of the scandal it would cause, how it would destroy both of their lives. He told her that they had sinned and that the best way to redeem themselves was to erase the evidence of their wrongdoing. Emma, stuck between her love for him and her own guilt, finally accepted that in mid-February she called. The clinic was hours away, in a town where no one would recognize his father. Michael drove her there. They were both silent for most of the trip when they arrived. He stayed in the car, leaving her to walk alone in the cold clinical building. The procedure was quick, but it left Emma feeling empty, like a part of her soul had been taken away. When it was over, Father Michael drove her back to St. Mary's Parish. Neither of them spoke about what happened. Had happened, but the weight of the secret weighed on Emma. She felt it every time she looked at her children, every time she knelt down to pray, and every time she saw Father Michael behind the altar, the man who had been her confidant. Her lover was now a constant reminder of her sin and the life she had ended. The days following the abortion were filled with silence between Emma and her Father Michael. They barely spoke, and when they were, it was like they were strangers. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she had lost more than just a child. She had lost a part of herself. Even, the guilt gnawed at her heavier and heavier. As each day passed, she could not sleep, eat, and when she closed her eyes, all she saw was the face of the baby she would never know one evening. A few weeks later, after the kids had fallen asleep and John was still at work, Emma sat alone in the dark living room, her mind racing. She couldn't. She didn't want to keep this secret any longer. The burden was too heavy to bear. She knew what she had done was wrong, and she believed that the only way to find peace was to confess. But confessing to God was not enough. She had to confess to God. Well, the next day she went to church, her heart beating in her chest. Father Michael was in his office, and when he saw her, he knew something was wrong. She told him she could no longer live with the secret. She had to tell the congregation about their affair and abortion. It was the only way, according to her, to atone for their sins. Father Michael's face turned pale as he listened to her. He tried to reason with her that confessing would only cause more pain, not just for them, but for them as well, for their families and for the entire community. But Emma was determined. She had already made her decision, and nothing he said could change her. Desperation crept into Father Michael's voice as he begged her to reconsider. He told her that if she denounced them, his life as a priest would be over. He would lose everything, her job, her home, her reputation. But Emma held on. She had lived with the guilt for too long, and she couldn't do it anymore since she wasn't going to back down. Father Michael's despair turned to anger. He couldn't let her destroy everything he had worked for that night as Emma left the church. Father Michael followed her. He begged her one last time, but when she refused again, something inside him broke in a moment of blind panic. He grabbed her by the throat and squeezed. Emma fought her, eyes wide with shock, but Father Michael didn't stop until she was still. When it was over, he looked down at Emma's lifeless body in horror. Invaded, he had committed the ultimate sin he had taken in his life, but he had no time to think about it now. He had to get rid of the evidence that he had carried Emma's body to his car. He went to a secluded field outside of town and left her there, hoping no one would ever find her. On the morning of March 6th, 2024, a local farmer named Joe Matthews was while checking his fields when he saw something unusual in the distance. As he got closer, his heart skipped a beat. It was the body of a woman Lying face down on the ground, he immediately called the police, and within minutes the quiet town in the parish of St. Mary was in uproar. Busily, police arrived on scene and quickly identified the body as that of Emma Richardson, a well-known and respected member of the community. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, but marks on her neck suggested she had been strangled. The police began searching the area, searching for clues that might explain what had happened. On the evening of March 8th, police had informed Emma's husband, John Richardson, that he was devastated by the news and had no idea who could have done this to him. During questioning, he revealed that Emma had been distant and troubled in the months before her death, but he didn't know why the police took note of it. But at the time, John's grief seemed genuine, and they didn't consider him a suspect. Over the next few days, investigators delved deeper into Emma's life for leads. On March 10th, came across something that caught their attention. Emma's phone records. There were numerous calls and text messages exchanged between Emma and her father, Michael Donovan. The frequency and timing of the messages was unusual, especially given the vow of celibacy from the priest. Investigators began to suspect there was more to their relationship than met the eye. Determined to uncover the truth, police obtained a warrant to search Emma's home on March 12th. During a thorough search of her belongings, they discovered a hidden diary hidden in a drawer. The diary entries shocked. Emma had written about her affair with Father Michael in detail, describing her feelings of guilt, the abortion, and her plan to confess everything to the congregation. The discovery of the diary shook up the investigation. The police now had a clear motive and a prime suspect. They knew they had to bring Father Michael in for questioning, but they also knew they had to proceed with caution. The matter was about to take a dramatic turn, and the community would soon learn that the man they had trusted and admired was not who they thought be. As the investigation deepened, detectives knew they had to do it, handle the matter delicately. The parish of St. Mary was a small, close-knit community, and Father Michael was a respected figure. The revelation that he might be involved in Emma's death would send shockwaves through the town. Detectives decided to proceed with caution, gathering as much evidence as possible. Before making their next move on March 15, 2024, Father Michael Donovan was summoned to the police station for questioning. He arrived calm and collected, dressed in his usual office C and black suit. The detectives took him to a small, sterile room with a single table and 2 chairs. They offered him a cup of coffee, which he politely refused. The interrogation began with routine inquiries into his relationship with Emma Richardson. Father Michael maintained his composure by speaking softly and clearly. He maintained that his interactions with Emma were strictly pastoral, and that he was there to provide spiritual guidance during his difficult times. But as the detectives pressed him with more detailed questions, his composure began to crack when they brought up the diary. Father Michael's face turned pale. He tried to dismiss it by saying that Emma was troubled, and that maybe she had written things that weren't. That's true, but the detectives didn't believe him. They presented him with the phone records showing the frequent communications between him and Emma, particularly in the weeks leading up to her death. Father Michael's agitation increased. He shifted in his seat, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to maintain his innocence. He denied having an inappropriate relationship with Emma, but the evidence was piling up against him. The detectives could see that they were going after him, but they needed more to make their case strong. 3 days later, on March 18, 2024, the investigation took a decisive turn. One of the detectives reviewing hours of CCTV footage from nearby businesses came across something important. A gas station located a few miles from the field where Emma is located. The body was found had captured footage of a car driving by. The night of the murder, the car matched the make and model of Father Michael's vehicle, and the time matched the window in which Emma was killed. Detectives knew that they had found the missing part they had been tracking down. He contacted the gas station attendant who was working that night and questioned him. The attendant recalled seeing the car and mentioned that it was unusual to see someone leaving that way at such a late hour, armed with this new evidence. The detectives felt confident enough to bring Father Michael back. On March 20, 2024, the detectives took action. They arrived early in the morning at the rectory where Father Michael was preparing for the day's services. He was visibly shaken when he saw the police at his door, they informed him that they had new evidence and asked him to come to the police station this time. There was no polite invitation. They were there to arrest him at the police station. The detectives presented the evidence, the diary, the phone records, and now the CCTV footage. Father Michael's hands shook as he tried to maintain his denial, but the weight of the evidence was too much. The detectives watched as the reality of his situation, defined in Father Michael's voice, shattered as he continued to deny everything. But it was clear he was stuck. The detectives didn't need a confession at that point. They had enough to charge him. They informed Father Michael that he was under arrest for the murder of Emma Richardson as they read her rights, the once respected priest. Slumped in his chair, his world collapsing around him, the man who had once stood at the pulpit delivering sermons on morality and righteousness was now led away in handcuffs. His fall from grace completed the news of Father Michael's arrest, spread quickly through St. Mary's Parish and the community. Was in shock. Many could not believe that the man they had trusted with their confession and faith could be capable of such a crime as Father Michael was arrested. The quiet town prepared for the trial that would soon follow, knowing that the truth would eventually be revealed in the courtroom. The secrets of St. Mary's Parish were no longer hidden, and the consequences would reverberate through the community. For years to come, the trial of Father Michael Donovan began on a cold, grey morning. In late September, the courthouse was packed with people from St. Mary's Parish, eager to hear details of the scandal that had rocked their community. The prosecution was led by prosecutor Susan Wright, a sharp and determined woman known for her relentless pursuit of justice. Across the courtroom sat Father Michael, his once proud face, now slumped in the defendant's chair, her eyes downcast as the trial opened. Wright wasted no time in laying out the case against Father Michael. She spoke with clear conviction, her voice ringing. In the silent courtroom, she began by presenting the diary entries written by Emma Richardson on each page. Was filled with raw emotion, her love for Father Michael, her guilt over the affair, her deep regret over the abortion. The jury listened intently as Wright read Emma's words aloud, drawing the portrait of a woman who had been led down a dark path by the man she then. Wright presented the text messages and call logs. These showed Emma's repeated attempts to reach the Father Michael. In the days before his death, the messages were desperate pleas filled with confusion and grief. Emma had clearly been struggling, and Father Michael had ignored her. Leaving her to face the consequences of their actions, the jury could see the pattern of communication. The way Emma's messages grew more frantic as the days passed, and the coldness of Father Michael's brief, dismissive responses. But the most damning piece of evidence came in the form of CCTV footage from the gas station. The grainy video showed Father Michael's car driving towards the field where Emma's body was later found. It was late at night, the road was deserted, and the timing fit perfectly. In the window in which Emma was murdered, the prosecution also presented forensic evidence, tiny fibers found on Emma's clothing that matched the interior of Father Michael's car, and traces of dirt on his shoes that matched the field where his body was discovered as the prosecution's case unfolded. The defense team, led by a veteran lawyer named Richard Green, prepared to counter when it was their turn. Green stood and addressed the jury, his tone calm, almost soothing, as he began to weave the tale of a man pushed to the limit. He did not deny in this case, It was clear from the evidence that there had been a relationship between Emma and her Father Michael, but Green argued that Emma had become mentally unstable after the abortion, pushed to the brink of guilt and grief. Green said that on the night of her death, Emma confronted Father Michael, accusing him of ruining her life and threatening to expose her. He contended that Emma had become violent and that in the heat of the action, Father Michael had acted in self-defense. It was a tragic accident. Green said there was no premeditated murder. The defense presented a few parishioner witnesses who had seen Emma grieving in the weeks before her death, trying to paint a picture of a woman unraveling the weeks-long trial, with each side fiercely defending its version of events. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, with each new piece of evidence adding to the suspense as the jury watched as they carefully weighed the arguments, knowing that their decision would change lives forever. Finally, after days of deliberation, The jury returned with its verdict. The courtroom was silent as the foreman kept his voice steady. "But this is serious. We, the jury, find the defendant, Father Michael Donovan, guilty of first-degree murder." A collective gasp swept the room. Father Michael's face drained of color, and he closed his eyes as the reality of the situation sank in on the once revered priest. A convicted murderer, he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. His fall from grace was complete as the judge handed down the sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The weight of the verdict settled on the courtroom. Hearing the people of St. Mary's Parish, who had once seen Father Michael as a moral guide, now saw him for what he had become. The trial had revealed their community's darkest secrets, and the truth once hidden could never be ignored. As Father Michael was led away in handcuffs, the courtroom slowly drained the story. Of Emma Richardson and her father, Michael Donovan will be told for years to come a cautionary tale about the betrayal of love and the ultimate price of sin. The people of St. Mary's Parish returned to their lives forever changed by the events that had unfolded in their midst. Yet, the memory of what transpired would cast a shadow over the town, one that would never entirely fade away. We hope you found this true crime story as captivating as we did in bringing it to you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more crime stories and click here to watch another gripping story.